Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Candice. Today we are talking about the things we consume that pollute our minds, what the symptoms of that ends up looking like, and how to renew our minds, get rid of the old ways of thinking like negative self-talk, anger issues, judgment, fears, anxieties, all of those things. How we renew our minds and restore them to good, wholesome stuff, right? We're gonna pray and then dive right in. God, thank you so much for wisdom and discernment, for your word and how it talks about how we need to renew our minds and to keep ourselves unpolluted from the things of this world. I ask that you would give us wisdom and discernment, open our eyes if there's any specific spots in our hearts that need to be and in our minds that need to be dealt with, if there's any specific thing that we need to connect back to something we consumed in order to get rid of it and get it out of ourselves. I ask that you would take my lips, make these your words, not mine. I ask these things in Jesus Christ's name. All right, so I think it's as we get older and, become adults and into adult life, there's a lot of things that adults deal with, right? Kids deal with a lot of stuff, but I think adults deal with a lot of things too. Anxieties, worries. We establish, habits of being judgmental or having negative self-talk, beating ourselves up, having toxic perfectionism, or all of these different things. And they've become habits, right? Over the course of time, they've just become something that we see something and we immediately think something negative, or we hear a song and it brings us back to some really bad place in our minds, or things like that, right? And I think a lot of the times sometimes we know where these reactions come from, right? And then sometimes we know it's an experience or something that happened early on in our lives, and that connects it to, okay, this is what caused me to be afraid of this, or this is what caused me to have anxiety about this particular thing, or this experience caused me to, doubt myself, or whatever it may be. But I think the part that we miss a lot of the times is that sometimes these negative things that we think and these negative habits that we end up cultivating can be traced back to some of the things that we consume as well, right? Like, for example, okay, when a kid watches a movie that is scary, right, and then they have bad dreams for the rest of the week, and they start being afraid to go outside or to look under their bed or to be in the dark, we as adults, right, automatically go, oh, that kid shouldn't be watching scary movies anymore, right? And yet somehow we don't have that same connection. We don't make that same connection, right? As adults, we don't think, oh, I started watching this show and this show has, elements of murder or things that are, dark, right? And now all of a sudden I'm, having some more anxiety than I normally do, or I'm, having disrupted sleep, right? Or bad dreams, or all of a sudden starting to, be fearful in ways I wasn't fearful before. Like, I had no troubles walking around the neighborhood before, but now I'm looking over my shoulder, is somebody gonna abduct me, I think there are more connections there as adults than we realize, and then that we don't give credit to, right? If you think about it this way too, the advertising industry, right? They spend billions with a B, right? Billions of dollars to advertise everywhere. Commercials, television, on your phones, the ads on social media. And let's think about it. We say, as adults that these things don't really affect us so much, but if they didn't work, do you think they'd be spending billions of dollars to make that particular jingle that sticks in your head forever, or to make that commercial that you randomly will play through your mind later on and connect it to? right? I mean, come on, if their advertising didn't work, if their advertising did not sway people's influence to then buying their product or purchasing their service, they wouldn't be spending that kind of money on it, right? So these things do have an influence on us, and they do affect how we think, how we behave, whether we fully give them credit for it or not. So let's talk about some of the different things. Some of the symptoms, we'll start with the symptoms. Some of the symptoms that you might have consumed something that is negatively affecting you, right? If you all of a sudden have become, more judgmental of other people, if recently you started getting more angry than normal, or it's something that you've been building on for years. Okay, it could be recent, it could be something that's been happening for a bit longer, right? Because you could have consumed something way, way in your past that's still affecting you, or something more recent. If you get frustrated very easily, right? If there's hatred in your heart for certain people that you know, or people that you don't, or the mythical man or whoever, whatever, again. Negative self-talk, right? If you're struggling with serious perfectionism, which kind of rolls in with negative self-talk, or confidence issues, right? Doubting yourself a lot of the times, fear of random things, fear of specific animals, or fear of clowns, or fear of, going out by yourself, or XYZ, right? A lot of these things can be traced back to something you consumed. Sometimes they're traced back to experiences, right? Like you might be afraid of snakes because there was a snake that bit you when you were a kid and that freaked you out, right? I'm not talking about the stuff that's actually connected to a physical experience. Those are a little bit different. But things that are connected to things we consume, like you're afraid of clowns because when you were a kid you saw a movie about some clown that was going around and doing horrible things, right? And so ever since then you hate clowns, right? That's something that's connected to something that was consumed. These things, in order to deal with these symptoms, right, that we have, we need to trace them back to where they started, right? So if you think about it, if you have a particular fear, right, say you have a fear of needles, okay, where did that fear start? Was there a show that you watched when you were a kid? Was there a movie? Well, trace it back. Take the symptom and trace it back to where it started. So I've had a few of those, right? Things that just randomly that I had anxieties about, and then I started thinking about them in my mind, and I'm like, oh, there was that show that I watched when I was a kid. That horrible show. That just traumatized me. And it was just a show on television, right? I had the evidence just points to that these things do impact us, right? They do make us, fearful or angry or whatever it may be. Honestly, if out of nowhere you started, really fearing being abducted, or really fearing germs or viruses or things like that, and then you think, oh, I've been watching a lot of the news lately, and they're pushing it in a fearful sort of manner of, hey, oh, this number is up, or oh, this is happening here. Oh my goodness, did you hear what happened here? Right? If you realize that specific things or specific shows or specific social media, like if you're struggling with comparison, right, or jealousy, or feeling inadequate, right, and you notice that the more social media you consume, the more you have those feelings, right? They can be connected to what you're consuming, right? What we consume could be anything from newspapers to the news, television, shows, movies, music, books, you name it, right? All the things that we consume could be a part of what's bothering us, right? In the Bible, it talks about taking all of our thoughts captive, right? And when we think about that, that is the first step basically in renewing our mind. The word renewing, if you look at actually Romans chapter 12, verse 2, I'll do this with one hand since I got Kitty in the lap. It says, and be not conformed to this world, right? So don't look like the world, don't act like the world, don't be like everything the world is doing, don't jump off a bridge because the world tells you to. But be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. We're supposed to renew our minds. That word renewing actually also means renovation. And I don't know about you if you've ever done any home renovations, but if you think about the actual process of doing a renovation, right? The first thing you have to do is identify what's wrong with your space, right? Identify what it is about your space that isn't working, what's not working for you, what isn't pleasing to you, what isn't helping you in any way, right? So if you're renovating a kitchen and, that leaky faucet, is not really helping you, right? So you have to identify what's wrong first. And that's what you do in your mind, right? You identify the thoughts, you have to be conscious of them and identify which thoughts are not productive for you, which thoughts are causing you harm, which thoughts are not doing anybody any good, right? You identify them first, right? Then, of course, there's the process of demolition, right? Actually getting rid of the bad stuff, saving the good stuff, right? And sorting through. When you demo the stuff, right? You're demolitioning the things in your mind that are no good for you, right? In order to actually demolish them completely and root them out, you have to stop consuming what's making them flare up, right? So in the case of anger, right? If you're watching a lot of shows or news things or social media things that people post that just make you really angry, things that just trigger you, things that, for whatever reason might bother you. If you stop the flow of that consumption and that triggering, right? If you stop the flow, then you're not going to be dealing with as much anger, right? Then you can actually deal with the anger, root it out, talk to God about it, and get rid of it, right? But you actually have to actually stop the flow of consumption for this to work, right? In the same way that someone who is addicted to pornography, right? If they want to stop being addicted to pornography, they have to stop the flow of consuming it first. So that way those images are not in their heads. And then they can deal with what's still in there and root it out, right? So you have to stop the flow of consumption. And one of the easiest things, I think, with this is to look at the things that you're watching. Look at the shows that you're watching. Listen to the music that you're listening to whatever movies you consume, whatever books, comic books, regular books, whatever, news, etc., social media, blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is you're consuming, look at it from an objective standpoint, okay? If it's a particular show, right, that you like watching, look at that particular show and see what in it is wholesome, what in it God would actually approve of, and then what things in it are not so good, right? So like a 90s sitcom, right, that I happened to flip to probably a week ago when I was watching television randomly. I'm not going to be watching television for March, the whole month of March. That's going to be fun. But I happened to be flipping and landed on this thing, right? And as I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, there's a family dynamic here, which is good. The parents are fairly well interacting with the kids, okay. But then on the flip side, this guy is very sarcastic to his coworkers, disrespectful, and, saying things and doing things that aren't very nice or very kind, and that's influencing his kids to do the same. And then the wife doesn't respect the husband because of these things. And I'm like, some of these things are not so great in this show, right? Yes, overall there might be some good themes, but there's also things that are not so good, and things that I don't necessarily want influencing me, like that sort of snarky attitude, right, that comes across in a particular character. And so I flip the show off, right? If we look at the shows and the things that we watch with an objective eye to see what is it that's okay with them, what is it that's not okay with them, right? Are they pushing fear in a specific way? Are they pushing anxieties in a specific way? Is it glorifying violence? Is it glorifying sex? Is it glorifying, lying and manipulating, which a lot of the shows do nowadays? Is it glorifying, just really unhealthy relationships, right? Look at what it is promoting and then see if that aligns with your values. If you're a Christian, a lot of these shows are not very much going to align with a lot of the values that we have, right? So that way you can weed out which ones are not so great for you, right? And just stop watching them. Stop flicking through it. If social media is a problem for you because you feel inadequate, you feel jealous, you feel like a failure because you're not living up to this glorified feed of somebody else's life, perhaps you should get off of social media for a while to do a cleanse for your mind, right? Okay, then that's the thing. Once we stop the flow that's incoming, right? And I know this can be hard to do, right? Because there's things like advertisements that are on the television at the gas station, like that's right in your face as you're pumping gas, or you're at the grocery store and on your way through the checkout line, there's all these magazines saying inflammatory things about people you don't know personally. And so you start judging these people and you don't even know them, right? Like, we do as much as we can to cut off the flow of consumption, right? Then we can work on what we've got going on, okay? So once you've cut off all of the new triggers, right? Then it's like the next part of renovation. You're getting rid of the old stuff, the things that no longer serve you, and you are kicking them out, right? That's cutting off the flow, getting rid of them. You're kicking them out, saying, no, this judgmental attitude is not serving me. No, these negative thoughts about myself are not okay. No, these negative thoughts about this person are not okay. No, my anxiety about this is not okay, right? And you start taking these thoughts captive. That's what it says in the Bible. You take them captive and you give them to God. And you say, hey, God, I can't deal with this. I can't handle this on my own. I need your help. Sorry, my voice is dying right now, y'all. You take them all captive and you give them to him, right? Because he can handle them way better than any of us can. He's cool like that. And anytime we ask him for help, he's going to help, right? So he'll step in and he will help us with those things, right? But we've got to ask. We've got to take them captive, give them to him. And as we do that, he will take us through the process of identifying them each time they pop into our minds, right? If it's a negative self-talk sort of thing, anytime your brain just starts doing it, you'll now be aware of it. He'll make you aware of it, so that way you can immediately be like, nope, I'm stopping this flow of thought, and just, nope, giving it away, right? If it's an anger thing or a judgmental thing or a comparison thing or a perfectionistic thing, whatever it may be, the moment you start thinking those thoughts, you're going to identify them, right? And you're going to stop it. You're going to bring yourself, take them captive, and give them to God. And as you do this over and over and over again, right? It's not a one and done sort of a thing. As you do this over and over and over again, you get to the point where immediately, the moment they pop into your brain, you're like, no, I'm not going there. And you're purging your mind of all these negative things and getting rid of them. And there's a beautiful amount of freedom in that. And just peace, right? And not dealing with negative self-talk and not dealing with perfectionist tendencies and not dealing with all of these things anymore, because you're renewing your mind, right? In the renovation process, you get rid of all the stuff that's not serving you, right? And you clean up everything. You clean all the surfaces, right? And then you start putting new things in place of the old junky things that you got rid of, right? We started putting new things in. And this is, again, the renewing part of our minds. And we renew our minds by going to the Bible, going to God, and seeing what he says about these things. If you're having problems with negative self-talk, go to the Bible and see what God says about you. God says he loves you. God says that you are fearfully and wonderfully made, right? That he made every hair on the top of your head, and they're all numbered and counted. Like, can you imagine some angel whose job it is to keep a tally on everybody's numbers of hairs on their head? Like, he loves you so much, he sent his own son to die in your place so you could go to heaven, right? If it's judgmental and a judgmental attitude that you're taking towards others, right? You're thinking about all the things that other people are doing wrong. Go to the Bible and look about what God says about them. He loves them just as much as he loves you, right? He created them too, and he wants them to get to heaven too. He takes mercy on them too, right? He made them beautifully and wonderfully made, right? If it's an anger issue, you go and look up Bible verses on anger, right? Go and look up Bible verses on peace, right? Whatever it is that you're dealing with, we take the old stuff out, and then you got to put new stuff into that place to fill it up. Otherwise, you've just got a half-done project, right? And half-done DIY projects don't look the greatest. So you go and you fill it up with what God says about you. You fill it up with what God says about your life. You fill it up with God's promises to you. You fill up that space with all of the goodness of God, right? And then the beautiful thing about that is there's no space then for that old junky stuff, like negative self-talk. There's no space then for all of that hatred and perfectionist tendencies and all of that nonsense anymore, because you filled it up with the good stuff, right? And when you have all this good stuff in your mind, you can easily then be like, okay, oh, here's a thought about negative, oh, I did this wrong, blah, blah, blah. Your immediate response is going to be no. Yes, I might have failed at this, but I am learning. This is a learning experience. God is teaching me through this. This is not something for me to be ashamed of. This is something for me to learn from, right? And you start combating these things with the Word of God. Because that's the thing. We don't battle against flesh and blood, right? We battle against spiritual things, spiritual wickedness and darkness and high places, things we can't see. And those things are out to destroy us. Those things are out to make us feel bad about ourselves. They want us to turn away from God. They want us to feel bad. They want us to, hate other people. They want us to hate ourselves. They want us to, just die and be miserable, right? And we're fighting against them. That's the point. And in order to have the actual tools to fight against them, the armor we need to fight against them, we need to know what God says. And we need to be able to stand on his word and stand on what he says of us. Oh my goodness, my nose is going crazy. But we need to be able to stand on those things, know what he says, and use that to fight the enemy. And that's how you get rid of the pollution of all the things that we consume, right? Cut off the flow, clean it up, renew it with good things. I think that's about it for today. Talk to you guys next time. Bye.